Can you make a hearty, satisfying vegan meal in the winter? Everyone knows that it's easy to cook plant-based in the summer because there's so much good produce and your body is naturally craving fresh food. But what about in the middle of winter when it's so frigid you can't even feel your fingers and all you want is a hearty, warming meal? I'm Nisha, this is Rainbow Plant Life, and today I'm sharing one of my favorite cozy meals for cold weather, a hearty vegan shepherd's pie. A traditional shepherd's pie filling is meat-based, but I promise you that this filling made with sticky browned onions and savory lentils is so hearty and delicious that you're not going to miss the meat. And putting together this lentil filling is really quite simple. We'll dice up 3 large onions, roughly chop up some fresh thyme and rosemary, and mince up a heck of a lot of garlic. We're going to use 8 cloves of garlic. If you make any of my recipes, you know I love using garlic. And if you haven't made any of my recipes, but you see one of mine and it calls for just like 1 clove of garlic, then you know that's a typo, or I've been kidnapped and someone has taken my vlog over. So please call the food police. All right, we're gonna cook everything down in this 12-inch oven-proof skillet. We're gonna put it at medium-high, medium heat with a little bit of olive oil. Once it's hot, we'll add the onions with a pinch of salt. And we're gonna cook these babies until they're nicely browned, well beyond the stage of turning translucent. This is going to add a lot more depth of flavor than if we just sweated the onions, so don't stir too frequently. And once those onions are browned, we'll add in more flavor with the garlic as well as the rosemary and thyme and cook for a few minutes. You could also substitute the thyme or rosemary with sage. That would work really nicely in this recipe too. Now it's time to plop in 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. Tomato paste brings both body and a nuanced tomato flavor to this dish, but you gotta cook it down for a few minutes until it turns brick red and starts to caramelize before you add the liquid. That's when tomato paste becomes a true flavor booster. Now that our tomato paste is caramelized, we'll deglaze the pan with a dry red wine. This is actually for me, but I've already measured a ½ cup for the recipe. We'll use the wine to deglaze the pan and scrape up all those brown bits on the bottom, which are concentrated with lots of flavor. Cook the red wine down for a few minutes until it's mostly evaporated and the mixture starts turning jammy. And when it no longer smells like wine, pour in the vegetable broth, a little less than 4 cups. And I like to use broth instead of water for a little more oomph. And then we're gonna add in a 1.5 cups of green lentils along with some bay leaves and paprika for a little extra flavor. We're gonna up the heat on this to bring it to a boil, then reduce the heat to maintain a rapid simmer for about 30 minutes. We'll stir occasionally until most of the liquid has been absorbed and the lentils are al dente. They don't need to be totally soft because they are going to get further cooked in the oven. The lentils don't need to be babysat, just give them a stir from time to time, and in the meantime we'll make our topping. A traditional shepherd's pie is made with a mashed potato topping, which is essentially what we're doing here, but I like to add a little more nutrients into my version, so we're gonna do a mix of potatoes and cauliflower. Since potatoes take longer to boil than cauliflower, I like to cut the cauliflower into large florets and then the russet potatoes into 8s. That way they take about the same time to cook. We'll cover the potatoes and cauliflower with cold water and add some salt to season and a sprig of fresh rosemary to complement the rosemary that we used in the lentil filling. The salt is going to infuse the potatoes and cauliflower from within, which means they'll taste well seasoned instead of too salty or bland, which is what happens when you season them with salt only after cooking them. We'll boil these until they're very fork tender, which will take about 15 minutes, and then we'll drain them really well. The lentils look about done now, so we're gonna finish them with a few flavor boosters. 1/4 cup of tahini for creaminess and to help bring the lentils together. A tablespoon of balsamic vinegar for a slight sweetness and tang. A tablespoon of tamari or soy sauce for a savory depth of flavor. And 2 teaspoons of vegan Worcestershire sauce. This is an optional ingredient, but if you have it, it adds a lot of rich, intense savoriness to dishes where you're trying to mimic the taste of meat, and it's also commonly used in traditional shepherd's pie. And of course, some salt and pepper to season. I'm just separating out the potatoes from the cauliflower because cauliflower is more watery, so it needs to be dried differently. So it is an extra step, which means if you're feeling lazy or just want something really decadent, go ahead and just use all potatoes instead of adding cauliflower. For the cauliflower, I'm going to add it to a fine mesh sieve, and then we're going to push down on it to squeeze out all the moisture, and there's gonna be a lot more than you think. And we're just gonna press down, but this bowl is too big, so we're gonna try a different bowl. Just get in there and squeeze, push down. Yeah. Now we're gonna mash up the potatoes and cauliflower with our other mashed potato ingredients. And by the way, if you have an Instant Pot, my cookbook, the Vegan Instant Pot cookbook, has a recipe for a lentil shepherd's pie where you can make the potatoes and the lentil filling all in the Instant Pot. So if you wanna check that out, I've linked to my cookbook down below. We're gonna add in some softened vegan butter, about 4 tablespoons, about a half cup of light coconut milk, but you can use any creamy plant-based milk you prefer, a tablespoon of nutritional yeast for a little extra flavor, and some salt and pepper to taste. I don't have a potato masher, so I'm just gonna use an immersion blender, and it's gonna give us a nice smooth texture. This is already delicious, but if you want to take it over the top, if you're making this dish for the holidays or a special occasion, go ahead and add a little extra vegan butter or just use all potatoes instead of cauliflower. Now we're just going to add the potato cauliflower topping, the mashed potatoes, on top of our lentil filling. And because this pan is oven proof, I'm just going to do it in the same pan, but if you don't have an oven proof pan, you're going to want to transfer the lentil filling to an oven proof 3-quart or 3-liter dish. Now for my favorite part, we're gonna smooth out the surface of the mashed potatoes. I find that an offset spatula like this works really well. And to bake in a little extra flavor and richness, drizzle the top with a few swirls of extra virgin olive oil, scatter on some more fresh thyme leaves, and finish with freshly cracked black pepper. Pop the shepherd's pie in the oven and bake at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes or until the lentils are bubbling. And for that perfectly browned mashed potato crust on top, stick your pan under the broiler for a few minutes. Ooh, look at that crust. This is extremely delicious warm out of the oven, but if you can manage to let it rest for a bit, it will solidify more and make it easier to slice. The shepherd's pie is so hearty and comforting and flavorful, but still really wholesome, so it's the perfect winter food you can feel good about. If you want more cozy comfort food, I've got more right here.